This is going to be a quick video on how to install, setup, and a brief example on using protocol buffers. Now, it's also referred to as Protobuff, but we're going to go ahead and just jump right in and install it. So what we're going to want to do, in the description there's a link that goes to the Protobuff releases in the their GitHub repository. If we scroll down, we'll see a list of links here. We're going to do Protobuff CPP 3.14.0.zip. And we're going to download that. I already have it, as that is this guy right here. So what you're going to want to do is go ahead and open that up and just extract it kind of where you want. So now you're going to want to move it to where you want to install it to. So in my case, I want to do it in my documents. I already made a folder called Protobuff. I would just put it in there. And then in here, I'm going to go ahead and make another example. I'll just actually do a secondary one on my desktop, but wherever you want it. So I'm just going to do new folder, Protobuff, and drag and drop it in there. Now if we open it up, we'll go to the CMake folder, and here we have the README. Now this is pretty step-by-step, and the things you're going to need are Visual Studio and CMake. So if you don't have CMake, you can go ahead and install that really easily. CMake.org, also in the description, latest releases, and just download the Win64 installer or whichever one you're using depending on your build and install it. Once that's done, we can go ahead and we're just going to follow along step by step here. So to be specific, we're opening command prompt, and this is what we are going to actually be opening. So just search for command prompt, x64, x86, cross tools, command for prompt, or for Visual Studio 19. And once we get here, we want to go to the directory of CMake. So right here, we're going to copy that, go over to our command prompt, do cd, and paste it in. So that way we're in our CMake directory. Next up, we scroll down a little bit. We want to go ahead and create, that's already been done, but they recommend creating an install folder. So where we go back, where we have the Protobuff folder, we're going to go ahead and create a new one and call it install. And this is where your libraries and includes are going to be stored once it's actually finished. So it's going to all be right in there. Go right back to our CMake folder. Let me just organize this a little bit cleaner. Like so. So next up, it's starting to lag. There we go. Okay. So go ahead and just saying clone the repository. We've already done all that because you can just download like I just showed you. Keep going, and we're about right here. So inside of CMake, we set our path, and now we're ready to continue and set everything up. So if we scroll down a little bit farther, we want to go ahead and create some folders. So we want a folder called build, and inside of that, we want a folder called release, and inside of build as well, we also want a folder called debug. So we can either follow along with these commands or just do it ourselves. I'm just going to right click, new folder, and call it build. And I'm going to create two folders. One's going to be called release, and one's going to be called debug. I'm going to go ahead and open the release folder and copy and paste. Go to our command prompt and change directory to our release folder. Now in here, what we're going to do is copy this whole section. So from CMake to the last period, we're going to copy and paste and press enter, and it'll go through and run everything that it needs to. Now make sure you're doing the correct one. So you might have the release or debug. Make sure it corresponds to release or debug. So once that's been done, we can do the exact same thing here. I'm just going to change my directory to debug instead and do the exact same thing, but for debug, because I want to be doing both. So now our release and our debugs have been filled. We can also do another one which it's going to tell us to do, and that's called solution. So create a new folder, call it solution, and we're going to go ahead and change the directory to it. So we're now in our solution directory, and same thing again. Oops, just copy and paste, and then wait. So let this go ahead and run on through, and it's done. Now what we can do is we can scroll on down, ignore all this, and we want to go ahead and compile them. Now this is where it's going to take a little while, but it's not all that bad. I'm going to go ahead and compile my release version first. So let's change our directory to the release folder. Then from here, we're just going to type in make. So in make and press enter. Now this can take anywhere from just a few minutes to about 10 minutes. I guess it just depends on your machine, but I will see you once it is completed. Alrighty, now that that is completed, we can choose whether or not we want to run a check, like shown here, which you would just literally do the exact same thing, just in make check. However, that's going to take a little while, and I don't want to do that for this video, but you can run that yourselves. Next up, you can do your debug. So that's the exact same thing. I'm not going to actually do it, but all we're going to do, all you would do is go back to your debug folder, enter your directory to your debug folder, and type in make again, and it'll repeat this process. So once you've done all that, assuming that's what you also want to do, we can continue, go through. Again, you may want to consider checking it. If we scroll down here, all tests are passed, we can go ahead and move everything to the install folder. So I'm going to move back to the release and do make install. And this won't take all that long, but go all the way back to our install folder. We now have the corresponding files. We have the compiler right here, our include directory, and the corresponding libraries. So for the most part, that's pretty much it. No real point in reading through the rest of this, but if you want to, go ahead. There might be something useful in there. But what we're going to do now is go ahead and create a Visual Studio project real quick, and then we're going to make a Dot Proto file, and I'll try to do a brief explanation on what those are, but I'm assuming you already actually know. Here's just an example. I'm going to go ahead and actually just create a new one. So just a console app. And I'll just do this one here as well. Oops. And create. Okay, once it's created, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all the comments and make sure it actually prints hello world, which it does. And now we can move on to creating the Dot Proto. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and actually go to my Visual Studio project right here, open that up. I'm going to create a new folder and call it Dependencies. Open that up, and I'm going to create my proto file right in here. So I'm just going to create a text document just so I can save it as a different format here in a minute. And if we head over to the tutorial that, or little example that they have up here on the Google Docs, which will be linked in the description, scroll down a little bit, you can find an example of the Dot Proto that they're using. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that, paste it in, and I'm going to remove most of this. So I'm going to remove the address book, repeated phone numbers, and everything. I'm going to delete this last curly brace and everything above the phone number message, like so, and just clean it up a bit. Starting to think my voice is going out on me. And then for the phone type, or the type variable, I'm just going to rename it. Well, change the type. So I want to change it from the phone type, which was that original enum right here. I want to change it to an int32 and remove that little default. Now I'll show you what the package shows up as here in a minute, but go ahead and file, save as, and I'm going to call this one phone.png. Proto, Proto, and select all types so that it saves accordingly. So now, I'm going to delete the new text document. We have this new proto file that contains this info. And that's what Protobuff is going to use to construct or serialize and deserialize our messages, well, our structures. So once we have that set up, we have to actually generate the .h and the header and the .cpp. And we do that using the compiler right here. So we have to make our way over to this compiler, pass this in as a parameter, and state what we want to run it as. So what we're going to do is where we have our proto file, we're going to click on the URL or file explorer, I don't know what you'd actually call this, and just type in cmd to bring up the command prompt at this directory. And we're going to make our way down to this directory where we have our compiler right here. So we enter all that in, /protoc, then we're going to do --, cpp_out equals period space phone.proto. So it'll look like this. Then press enter. There we go. And as you can see, it generated a .h and a source file. And these are the two that we would bring into our Visual Studio project. Not ready to close that just yet, but let's go ahead and bring those over. So I'm going to copy, or better yet, I'm just going to Control X and move them where our source folder is. So here's our .cpp file that got created with our project, and just paste it in there. So the directory is project name, and right in here. Back in Visual Studio, I'm going to open it up, and I'm just going to select both of these and drag them in to the Solution Explorer, just like so. Now we have them both linked right here. And as you can tell, there are a lot of errors because we haven't set up the includes or linked the library. So what we're going to do is inside of our dependencies folder that we made, we want to drag in our include and our lib folder. So if you did, and you went through and you did the debug as well, you would also end up with a folder here that ends up with a .d. So for example, here's my completed one right here. So you have Protobuff and then Protobuff D. The D ends, well, indicates that it's for debugging. So I'm going to go ahead and copy my lib and my include folder into my dependencies like so. I'm going to go back in Visual Studio, right click on my solution or my project name, properties, under C++, we're going to go to general, and additional include directories is where we're going to go. Hit the drop down, hit edit, and we're going to add a new one here. So we're going to go ahead and start. We know that where our files are that we want, so they're in our solution directory, and then dependencies. So we're going to do $, open brace, solution dir for directory, and then if we press enter, you can see the directory right there. So it fills out the path for you. Then we want dependencies and include. So we're going to copy dependencies to include and paste that at the end. So it's the solution directory, then dependencies, then include. And that gives us that path right here. Press OK and apply. And as you can see, the errors are gone. There's a couple here, but that's mostly IntelliSense, and it's not picking up the macro. So now we're going to go ahead and try to compile. So we're just going to right click, hit build. Okay, so I'm still having issues here with the, what do you call it? The macro. And a bunch of other random linking errors. So I'm going to go fix those real quick and state what I did because I feel like I overlooked something. Alrighty, so it took me a little while to figure out that I completely forgot to actually link the libraries to the linker. So we're going to go over here to our project, back into properties. I'm going to go down here to linker, under General and go to Additional Library Directories, hit Edit, click this little new line, and again, it's the same thing here. We just have our dependencies and then our lib folder. So we're going to copy those just like before. And same thing. Solution directory, dependencies, library, and it fills out the path accordingly. Go ahead and press OK. And next up, we go to Input, go to Additional Dependencies, again, hit Edit, and we're going to add these two right here. So what we do is we just copy the name, and we paste it in and do .lib. Same thing again, but end it with a D and do .lib. Now remember the D is for our debugging, and then we have the normal one for release. Then we can hit apply and OK, and rebuild. Okay, that's not quite right unless I entered in the wrong path. Let me try doing a quick clean. Okay, what am I missing here? Okay, back in the additional library directories again under the linker. I'm not sure what I did. I may have set this path to include and not our library folder, but I'm not entirely sure what in the world I did there, but I just re-entered it in, and we're fine. So anyways, now we can right click and compile just fine, and everything's good to go. So now we can just include our phone header file right here. And here's where that tutorial thing came in. No, that is the wrong folder. Close down the wrong one. No, it's this. So our Dot Proto. So here we have package tutorial. So if we want to access our phone number struct, we would just do tutorial, : phone number. We have phone number equals new tutorial phone number. And here we can kind of do whatever we want with it. So for example, phone number, we have set number and set type. So those correspond, it automatically does the setters for us. So that corresponds to number and type. So set number is a string. So we're going to do, this is my, actually better yet, 555, blah, blah, blah. There's our phone number. Then we can do phone number, set type. Let's do 50. And there we have it set up. So that's the basic struct. So we can do everything, we can print out and all that kind of stuff, but we want to actually see what the result is after it gets serialized. So we can convert this into a string very easily. So we're going to do std string. Let's do serialized equals phone number, serialize as string, and that's it. We're literally done. It automatically takes care of it for us effortlessly. So if we want to print it out, you can kind of see the result. And it's not going to look 100%, but if you recall right, Protobuff is not like JSON where everything's readable. So we don't have, we don't have the name of the parameter and then its value and all that kind of stuff. It handles it its own way. So this can be taken in pretty much a bunch of different ways, but for the most part, that's how it would end up being. So no matter what, if you just change out the value, you can kind of see the symbols change. It's not going to read it accordingly, but it drastically is reduced from the size of JSON, XML, and most other forms that you would use in this case. So that's one of the big pros of it. So I kind of look forward to really diving into it and tinkering around, because I feel like it'll be a lot of fun, because I'm learning Kotlin as well. So this should be a pretty nice balance here. I can kind of try to make some applications to go to and from an API written in Kotlin and just kind of see, how well that and smoothly that actually goes over. I plan on doing a couple more tutorials later on once I get more familiar with Protobuffs, but for now that is going to be all. So, hope you enjoyed.